The Canon EOS R is a little over 3 years old, and you're wondering, is it still worth it in 2022? Well, creators, my name is Valdez, and today we're gonna be talking about the pros and the cons of the Canon EOS R. So let's begin on the photography side of things. So pro number one is the fact that this is a 30 megapixel camera. So with it having 30 megapixels, it's gonna allow you to be able to crop into your images and retain that quality. Props number two is the viewfinder. Now you might be curious as to why the viewfinder? Well, this is a mirrorless camera. So as you're looking through the viewfinder and you're adjusting your settings like your aperture, your shutter speed, or ISO, you're able to see live changes, and that's actually how your picture is going to look when you take the actual photo, which is super neat and has honestly made my life a lot easier. Now look, this next one, a lot of people actually really hated this about the mirrorless systems. It kind of has to do a little bit more with the lenses, but the fact that they have a control ring option. I remember seeing a lot of hate on this whenever these cameras and lenses were initially first announced, but personally myself, I think that the control ring is a incredible and useful tool to have. I actually have mine set to ISO, which honestly just speeds up my workflow and makes life super easy. Now the next pro is going to be eye tracking. Now this is super useful, especially if you specialize more in portrait photography. Makes capturing the photos a lot easier. Make sure that those eyes are nice and sharp, that you're in focus. So eye tracking is a huge benefit, especially if none of your cameras in the past have had it. It's literally life-changing. Now along with that as well, the camera does also have focus peaking available, which if you're kind of more of a manual type shooter. And perhaps one of the best features that I think every camera should have is the flip out LCD screen. Honestly, comes in handy not just for video but also photography. I find myself using this all the time. I remember whenever I was younger, 28 by the way, but whenever I was younger, I used to like lay down on the ground and stuff to get like those nice low angles, and now honestly it's just becoming a lot harder now that I'm older. Okay, so that is a lot of pros. Now let's talk about the cons on the side of photography. So obviously con number one is the fact that it only has one SD card slot. Is it a deal breaker? Absolutely not. There's a lot of cameras that have one SD card slot, but when it comes to these really important photo shoots, like if you're doing like a wedding or if you're videotaping something really important, that card can get corrupted and you only have one SD card slot, so you have a chance of potentially losing that. Now personally, I've never had this happen to me, and hopefully it doesn't. Let's just like knock on wood that it doesn't happen. Now con number two is gonna have to be that little touch bar included in the Canon EOS R. Yeah, it's not the best thing in the world, and you can assign it to you know, for different functions and whatnot. I have mine set for different control and like focusing points, but it can get in the way whenever you're actually like shooting. You know, you'll accidentally touch it and it will change. It's not the greatest thing in the world. I would much prefer like a joystick. Is that what they're even called? Joystick, thumbstick, whatever it is, right? Like the one on the R6 and the R5. And that's pretty much it for the photography side. Now let's go ahead and discuss video, which is very important. Now I'll be honest with you, there's not a lot of pros when it comes to video, but there are a few. First of all is of course the flip out screen. I kind of explained that earlier on. Same pros for video. Now the second pro is the fact that this camera does have C-Log as an option available. If you don't know what C-Log is, just basically think about it kind of like as in RAW for photos, but this is for video. So shoots in a flat profile, you're able to manipulate the colors a lot more than you normally would with the camera that doesn't have a C-Log option. And the last pro is the fact that this camera is incredible for creating YouTube content. So if you're interested in becoming like a content creator, this is going to be a wonderful camera for you to use. Okay, now we do have a few cons to go over. The first one is going to be the fact that you can shoot in 4K. Now wait, 4K sounds good, right? Yes, it sounds great, but whenever you add a crop to 4K, not so good, not so good. For example, right now I'm shooting at about 1080p at about roughly 24 millimeters. Let me show you what the 4K does to that. Now the next con is whenever you are manipulating your footage, you will begin to notice that it is a little on the noisy side of things, especially like if you're in the dark environment and whatnot, it can become noisy. Now, hey, for this next one, I just want to mention that I know that you love shooting things in slow-mo, so you really want those higher frame rates, right? Like 120 frames per second sounds freaking incredible. And the Canon EOS R has that, but it only has it whenever you're shooting at 720p. Does the footage look okay? I haven't really messed with it much because it's 720p. Why can't we get it at least at 1080? If it was at 1080, it'd be so great. But no, we're stuck at 720p for 120 frames per second. And the last con, of course, is that the camera does not have IBIS, which is in-body image stabilization. Basically, it really helps you get those steady shots whenever you're filming. Also does help a little bit with photography, by the way. While it's not 110% necessary, it is super helpful, and this camera does not have it. Okay, so now after discussing all that, is the EOS R worth it in 2022? From my personal experience, I'm going to say yes, because this is my main camera. I've captured some of my best photos with this camera, and I've also created hundreds of pieces of content. So if you have the funds available, I would definitely go ahead and go with this purchase. Unless you can afford like the R6 or the R5, those would be preferred. But if not, you're gonna be perfectly fine with the Canon EOS R. And that's everything I got, guys. If you did enjoy, make sure to go ahead and like. If you want to see more content, subscribe. And as always, stay creative, my friend.